Hey, it's Amber Albee Swenson, and you're listening to the Caretakers Journey podcast.
Welcome, my friends, to this week's Meaningful Conversation. I'm your host, Carole Leathem, and my guest today is Amber Albee Swenson. And Amber is a speaker, a podcaster, and the author of 13 books. Her latest release is the one we're going to talk about today, and it's called The Key to Confidence. Where do you go when you're feeling not enough? I loved the title. I loved the subtitle. As soon as I got it, I dove in. And you know, I always buy the books and you know, I always read the books, listeners. And what I've discovered is that I know as a caretaker, and probably you too, we struggle with feelings of not being enough, being inadequate, and especially overcoming past hurts caused by the person we're caring for at that time. My own struggles with caretakers burnout, which have brought anxiety, my own struggles with depression, and a fear for just the daily life that I'm living. Amber writes that we can live with a boldness and a joy which comes from our confidence in Christ. And as a caretaker, boy, I know we struggle with feelings of not being enough. I was just thinking about that yesterday. Amber encourages us to remember that God is more than enough for our caretaking journey. I'm excited for you to meet her and hear her heart. And she's going to draw upon her own personal struggles and how she's using them to encourage and point us to God. So, Amber, welcome to the show.
I am so happy to be here, and I really have a heart for caretakers. So thank you for letting me be part of this conversation.
Oh, wow. Well, I am really excited because, Amber, I have caretakers from all over the world. We're now in 30 countries. And I know personally the struggle of care. We're going to dive in deep real quick because I know personally the struggle of caring for someone who I share a painful past with. And you write in your book, it is so easy to get stuck in the past. And it's important for us to reconcile with the past. And that to reconcile means that we coexist in harmony. So I just want to jump into the deep end here. Will you share with us about this truth?
Yeah, boy, we are going straight to the deep end, but that is where I begin the book. The first chapter is Confident You Can Get Past Your Past. And I had two episodes in my life. I had shameful things that I did in my college years that I had not dealt with. And then I had a really, really hurtful church hurt episode. And so the two were coexisting in my mind, and I honestly could not get past the hurt. I was struggling so much. And we're talking last August, so almost a full year ago. I had a Zoom with a dear pastor friend and told him about the church hurt. And it started me on this journey. First, I wrote the Key to Confidence, this book. When this book was just about out, I got the guts, the electronic version of the book back, and read the first chapter again, recorded a podcast on it. And that's when I said, man, I have so much more to say on this subject. And so the Key to Confidence came out in April. In June, Getting Past Your Past, Reconciling What You Cannot Change came out. And now I am just finishing the manuscript for Closer to Home, a Christian guide for finishing well, which is on aging, caretaking, all of the above. But let me get to, yes. So just to give a little bit of credibility to the caretakers out there, in 2014, I started my journey as a private elderly companion.
Oh.
I had been a nursing assistant. I had worked at the hospital in cardiac monitoring. Then I stayed home for 5 years I had 4 kids. And so I stayed home. When my youngest went to kindergarten, I was praying for a job. And a woman from my congregation, her father was a retired pastor who had Alzheimer's and could not speak anymore and really struggled with swallowing. So while he was in a skilled nursing facility, she needed people there to feed him each meal because it was like an hour and a half feeding time. So she asked if she could hire me. I was looking for a job. I had a nursing assistant background. So that took me on the journey from 2014 until 2020. I was a private elderly companion with several clients until they died. And then in 2020, the world shut down. And so the family that I was working for didn't want outside help coming in. They were very fearful of bringing COVID into their mom. So I was suddenly laid off. Didn't know what to do with myself. And so I went during COVID, believe it or not, the nursing homes in our area were in crisis. They didn't have enough caregivers. And so I became a traveling nursing assistant at skilled healthcare facilities. And so I spent 2 years doing that from 2021 until 2023. And so I have approximately 10 years experience in the caretaking role. What I didn't know at the time, my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2023. We knew it probably 2019. I went to the doctor with her and we tried, and they didn't think it was severe enough at that time to warrant testing. But by 2023, we had the diagnosis. We had gone through the PET scans and all that. Um, and so anyway, what I didn't have in all my experience with caretaking, I didn't have the personal experience of it being a loved one. And
Mm-hmm.
I have found that that changes absolutely everything, that you can throw out the manual if it is your own mother, because everything that you do when it is not your loved one that works will not work when the person you love or you're taking care of that person who knows you in and out and is like, oh, no, you're not. And so God made it super personal for me during that time. So there's the cred factor.
Okay, stop. I want my listeners to know I had no idea of any of this because when I first approached her publisher, her publicity person about coming on the show, we were talking about how we would make this meet the caretaker's needs, and God just knew that you needed to be here and talk about this because I resonate so much with what you just said. When you're doing caretaking for someone other than a husband or a mother or a loved one that you're related to, it's so easy. But boy, when you are trying to cross into that wife, caretaker, daughter, caretaker role, oh, so difficult
It's
because
a
you're right.
it's a whole different animal that I could never have understood. And I'm so grateful that God just didn't allow me to speak about something that I didn't know. Because even in terms of caretaking, when I'm a private elderly companion, when I went into the nursing homes, even if I had a 12-hour shift, I got to go home and sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then someone else took over. Or if it was a really tough assignment because the person you're giving care to was having a really bad day,
Mm-hmm.
someone was coming to relieve you.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said too, I've seen it with my own mother. My husband had a hip replacement in May, and that was the first time I had done anything long term in terms of caring for my husband. And we actually had my son come over on Memorial Day. So about 3.5 weeks post-op, my husband had had a terrible reaction to a medication.
Mm,
And things had not been going well at all. He was in a lot of pain, and then he wasn't able to take his pain meds because of the reaction. And so we were in a really, really bad cycle. And my son came over on Memorial Day out of the blue, and he said, I'm just going to take dad for a ride. We're going to get out of the house. And I wouldn't have known enough to know that that's exactly what we needed. We needed an
mhm.
intervention from someone else, not
Uh,
us, to get
yeah.
out of this crazy cycle. As soon as he took him and he removed him and took him for a ride and got him out of the house and brought him back, and then just having other people there for a
Mhm.
meal changed everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I talk about in my ministry and on the podcast I talk about taking a mini vacation, and what you got was a mini vacation right there where someone came and intervened and helped you. And sometimes that just happens organically because we have people around us who love us, and sometimes we have to ask for that help. And I
Right.
think that it gets complicated even more when, like, my mom and I had a very complicated past, and her funeral service is coming up on July 12th, which will be it will happen before this airs. And I was thinking about, as I was writing the eulogy, because I'm the one that will be speaking, um, I'm writing something so totally different than I would have written 3 years ago. And
Yes.
it's because of healing. It's because of those 3 years of caring for her and getting to know her in a way I didn't know before.
Yep.
And so you talk about coexisting in harmony. And I kind of see where it didn't take away the past, it didn't take away the pain, but there was really this acceptance, and there was really this leaning into, how am I going to respond? And I had responded a certain way for so long, and then all of a sudden I had to respond differently. And I think that's kind of what I think you're talking about when you say we coexist, because it doesn't go away, but we have to find a way to do it. So when you wrote this in your book, what was your thought process behind the statement that it's important to reconcile and that it's coexisting in harmony? Because it still hurts. Even today, I was thinking about it, it still hurts.
Yeah. Well, what you can't do is change the past. And what I don't want people to do is stay stuck. And far too many Christians, I have found, are very much stuck in their past, and they have not gotten past the hurt, either the shameful things that they have done, which they still carry, or the hurt that has been done to them, either one. And so the idea of coexisting is really taking the account of Joseph and learning from Joseph. Joseph never said what you did was good.
Yeah, he
He
didn't.
never he lived the trauma, and you can see it. He cried the first time they came to Egypt. He cried when he revealed himself later on. He was weeping so much that Pharaoh's household heard about it. You see the trauma. So the hurt's
Yeah,
there. You can't ignore the hurt. You can't
right.
push it aside. You can't bury it. That's not going to help you. What you can do is you can say, okay, the hurt happened, or
Mhm.
the shame or the hurt, the sin, the shame, the hurt. It happened. I can't change that. But Lord, you can use it and you can heal me. So, what are the steps that I need to take to go from a place of being stuck to being
Mhm.
to a place of healing? And I think there's some pretty important things that we do. First of all, I think it's important that we let somebody else in. I cannot tell
Mhm.
you how many people are carrying these stories by themselves. They have never
Mm.
told one other person of what's gone on. They have
Yeah.
never talked about the abuse. They have never talked about the mind games. They have never talked about the sin. And I mean, that's just Satan's playground. When we keep it in secret, it is just Satan's playground. So, first of all, in James 5, we're told to confess our sins to one another and pray for each other so we can be healed. So I would say, first and foremost, get it out. Second, go through the process of forgiveness. Forgiveness does not mean that what they did is okay, or
Right.
it means we are not going to carry it. We're leaving it up to God to deal with it.
I love that.
He
I love
says,
that.
"Revenge is mine. I will repay. I'll keep track of the score. You don't have to." We're told in 1 Corinthians 13, love keeps no record of wrongs. So
Right.
we don't have to keep the score. We can just say, okay, they did this or I did this. I'm not going to keep the score. I'm giving it to you, Lord,
Mhm.
and I am letting you deal with it. That's really what forgiveness is. And
Mhm.
then it's just a matter of placing it all in God's hands and saying, God, put the right people around me. Uh, put me in the right state of mind for you to make me whole again. And
Mm.
that's a very shortened version of a book that I read, just a book that goes through the process a lot. But those are some of the steps that are really important.
Yeah. I love that so much, and that's really the steps that I have gone through. I think they're a universal step that we don't really understand. In September, I came back from an event in Tennessee, realizing that I had some unhealed trauma that I really needed to deal with, and so I found a therapist who specialized in trauma. And I made the appointment, and I went in, and I was so nervous because I could feel the weight of all of the stuff I was holding in and not verbalizing. And I had verbalized to someone in September for the first time something that had happened. And they're like, oh, you need to get some healing from this. And so verbalizing it made it come to the surface. And so I was really overwhelmed. And when I got in and sat down with the therapist, the first thing after about maybe 20 minutes of questioning, she said to me was, you are more far along in the process of healing than you realize. And I know that we're going to be able to get there because you've already verbalized it, you're already journaling about it, you are already aware of it, and you're already setting boundaries to
Yeah.
keep it from happening again. And so really it was just kind of spending a few minutes with her, a few sessions with her,
Yep.
just kind of bringing it to the surface and allowing it to heal and realizing that God was using all of it. And I think that's so critical because when we talk about forgiveness, I think a lot of times people think we have to go back and create this beautiful relationship with the person. We have to put ourselves, and it's not true. We
No,
can
it's not.
set healthy boundaries. And I think, hit the key when you said it's letting go of us carrying the frustration, the pain, the hurt, and realizing that we can't change the past. It happened. And really, I say I am the person I am today because of, not in spite of, those
Yes.
circumstances.
I think most people would agree with you on that. I think, I mean, clearly God uses whatever is put in our life, right? That's not saying that he said it was okay. It's just he's going to use the material that he has for his glory. And that's taking it to the last step, which is then using your trauma to help
Hmm.
somebody else get
Yeah.
through theirs. And but again, this comes down to, being open enough to share it. And the one thing I would say to anybody who's listening, who's like, I have never told anybody,
Yeah.
I get it. And I think you get it, Carole, that when you bring the past up, it's like ripping a Band-Aid off. It is like bringing it all back to the surface again. And I remember that friend that I told you about last August telling my whole church hurt story too. I'm a fairly decent friend with this person. Before we got on the Zoom, I thought I was going to throw up. I
Hmm.
was on my couch crying for 2 hours afterwards because it
Mhm.
does. It takes the
Oh.
Band-Aid and it tears it off. But what I can also tell you is it was the beginning of a phase of incredible healing,
Mm.
of taking one step after another, of having tough conversations with people that I
Mhm.
need to have conversations with, of just coming to terms with this, admitting this, all the things. And so, yes, it is incredibly painful. I'm not gonna minimize it and say it's
Yeah, it is. It
it
is. And
is.
I often say, I don't want anyone to ever hear me say that this journey of caretaking or healing or caring for someone who you have trauma with, I don't want them to ever hear me say it's easy, because it's not. And there are days where I can still smile, I can still have joy, but it's because my joy is not from my circumstances, it's from my relationship with him. And I can be face down on this carpet in this room where I'm sitting right now,
Yeah,
just sobbing, because it hurts. It hurts
yeah,
so bad. And I always say, I like to say it's because someone used duct tape instead of a Band-Aid and they tried to rip it off, because
yeah,
it is so painful. And Amber, I just love your heart for God and your heart for encouragement. I cannot wait for this third book that you're finishing. And I hope you'll promise to come back and talk to us about it when you get it done.
so much.
Because I love, as you can see behind me, Amber, and some of the clips you'll see, I have books and books and books and books, because I love the just when God helps me through someone else. And these
Yeah,
past 3 weeks, I've done a lot of recordings, and every one of them has helped me, and you are helping me as well today. So thank you for that. And Amber, I want to go back to your book, and I want to talk about chapter 3, because that, I think, of your whole book, that was my favorite one, because you talk about confident that God isn't bothered when you ask for little things. And I keep a journal of my prayers, and I'll go back and I'll look. And it's really hard for me when I don't see the answers, because I'm asking for little things that I don't even know if they're ever going to be answered. But as a caretaker, sometimes I feel guilty because my list of requests seems so insignificant. Like, help me find time to breathe, help me find time to whatever. And I know that when I look at the needs of others in the world, I think, we start comparing our caretaking journey. And you write this, and this is my favorite thing in the whole book. And it's a sticky note now on my window. And it says, I don't know why we don't take small things to God in prayer. Is it because we don't think it's worth his time? And then I stopped and I realized that I have found myself starting prayers with, sorry to bother you again, God.
Yeah.
Really, that is because I talk to God in that kind of a dialogue.
Yeah.
Sorry to bother you again, God. But, and you talk about us shifting our prayers and realizing that we are not only not bothering God, but that he hears our prayers, even if we feel like they're trivial.
Yeah. And in fact, he's insulted if we try to come to him. It truly is that. If you read, I think it's in Isaiah, about how he says, you go to Egypt and you go to the chariots, but you do not come to me. And I use in the book the account of King Asa, who had a
Mm-hmm.
foot disease, and he just decided. It says, though his foot disease was severe, he consulted only the doctors and not the Lord, which is that's there for us for a reason. It was like God saying, "I'm here. Why are you not coming to me? The doctors can't figure it out. This is no problem for me." And I think that I wish that if you're listening to this right now, you're not seeing my face as Carole was talking about, the small prayers and saying, I'm sorry to bother you again. Cause I was just like a sigh. And this is what I really, really want you to know. If it's not a small thing to you, it's not a small thing to God.
Oh, say that again.
If it's not a small thing to you, it's not a small thing to God. You are his dearly loved child. And
Mm-hmm.
if it's on your heart, if you are looking for breathing room, if you are saying, God, I remember I had a newborn and I asked God for 4 hours of sleep. True story. I was just it was like, I felt like every 2 hours I was up and I asked for 4 hours of sleep and I got 4 hours of sleep. My brother came over later that day. He said, why didn't you ask for six? I said, I don't know. I felt like 4 was a lot to ask for at the time. I don't know. I think she maybe needs to eat every 4 hours. I don't know. But, but 4 hours of sleep, if that's what your body needs, that is not a small thing to you. It's a big thing to you. And so God is there. And just flipping that mind shift from, I'm sorry to bother you, to
Mm-hmm.
realizing he's bothered when you don't come to him.
And
Come to me. I got it under control, guys. I can do this. I can handle it.
and one of the things I discovered in the last few weeks, just after kind of diving into your book and thinking about this sorry to bother you again mentality, is that when I stopped that and I started looking back, and when I would come to God and say, sorry to bother you again, and I would tell him what I was feeling, all of a sudden it brings that need to the surface. I'm verbalizing it again because I do talk out loud to God in my room. And lo and behold, the majority of the time, the answer is already sitting there in the form of a person, or
Yeah.
at one point it was a bill, a check in the mail. It's like God is saying, you need to come to me because I already know
Yes.
I already know it. You're not telling me anything I don't know. And you're
Yes.
not telling me something that I've not already sometimes taken care of. And you're so worried about not bothering me that you're not even seeing that the solution is there. And so I think it's just going back to, it's a relationship and he loves us. And we have to tell him what we feel, even though we know he knows it, or even though we feel like we're bothering him. So to go one step further, where does true confidence in God and kind of that sense of purpose come from
Yeah.
for you?
Okay. So there's three things on this. So first of all, it's knowing who God is.
Okay.
When I know that God is the King of Kings, limited, not limited, I'm limited,
Mm-hmm.
unlimited, Almighty King of Kings, who loves me dearly, then I know that I have access to him. So it's knowing who he is, it's knowing who I am. I'm his child. We want our children to come to us. We don't have hours, it's not business hours. Kids, you can call me during these hours. You can contact your parent anytime, any day. I love the account of Abraham Lincoln, his son, who was coming up to the White House and he saw a soldier there who was weeping. And he said, why are you, sad? And he said, well, I wanted to see the president, but they wouldn't let me in. And the young man said, well, follow me. And he brought the soldier into his dad's office because the son can bring anybody in he wants. And I remember that often that we are God's children. So first of all, when I know who God is, then
Mm-hmm.
when I know who I am, and then when I know that prayer changes things,
Mm.
then where do I get my identity? From knowing these three things, that there's a lot of things I cannot do on my own. True story. My strength runs out. My patience runs out. I'm not always happy. I sometimes am pretty grouchy, but I have a God who loves me. I have access to him, and he cares about what I say to him. Those three things just keep me going in the right direction.
Oh my gosh, I love that story about Abraham Lincoln's son. That's so beautiful. That's just such a beautiful picture of how God loves us and sees us, and that's so true. And I think when we understand those three things, then it makes it easier for me. I know I struggled a long time with the idea that my husband was going to have mental health issues for the rest of his life. It's really been a difficult journey for me to understand that I had a gentleman who's a mental health specialist come on the show, and he was talking about how it's a brain disorder, and sometimes it's just your brain breaks and you can't fix it, and no matter how hard you try, you're not going to fix it. And I had such a thriving ministry prior to the mental health, and then all of a sudden I didn't want this to be how people looked and thought about me. And then I realized when I got into the caretaking role with my mom that God was opening up this beautiful world of very focused love, encouragement, equipping for me. And that sense of purpose now is coming from that confidence that you talked about, that God has honored me. I feel like now as caretakers, we need to understand we're doing holy work. This
Yes.
is sacred ground. You share in your book the story of Moses. And I think how Moses took off his shoes and approached that burning bush because he was walking into the presence of God. And as caretakers, I think the more we understand that God is allowing us to be in this position of caring for another one. And my next question is, I care for my husband who struggles with mental health. I know there's a lot of readers who care for people who are really going through dark times.
Yeah.
And what would you say to a listener who is caring for someone who's going through one of those very, very dark times?
I'm going to say something that's easy to say and hard to do, but it's so important. What I learned almost from day one with caretaking, and this was before I had anything to do with my mom, this was just when I was starting as an elderly companion to a man who had severe Alzheimer's. Your mood is contagious. So, what I'm going to say is do not match that mood, no matter how dark of a place they're in. You cannot match that. You cannot let them. You have to go. And I say this not flippantly at all. Know that it comes from the depth of my soul. You have to plug into the source of all love and light,
Mm-hmm.
and to keep getting from being drained, from
Mm-hmm.
being sucked dry yourself. And so when they are in a dark period of, oh my goodness, the pain is so bad, or I can't get out of this, or whatever, it's important that you don't go there. And we all do. We
Yeah.
all do. There will be days that this will not work. You will slip into it, you will be frustrated, but the sooner you can get out of that and get back to the source of all hope, strength, love, when you can get filled up with God, and then approach them as you're caring for them with the love and the joy and the peace, the fruit of the Spirit that you
Mm,
can offer. Now you are a hope.
mm,
It's David playing the harp for Saul.
mm.
He
Oh, what a
couldn't
beautiful
necessarily,
picture.
yeah, he couldn't necessarily change Saul. Saul was still going to get in those funky moods, but what he could do is play the harp for him, which would settle him down a little bit. You can't do that if you also get in the funky mood. You have to be the one that is, I'm going to pull out the harp, which might be today we're going to listen to a podcast. Today we're going to listen to a sermon. We're going to have Christian worship music on. Let's pray together. Let's do a devotion. Let's just read this from the Bible. You bring the harp and
Mm,
don't fall into whatever mental guck they're in right
mm.
now.
Such good advice. So good. I remember when my husband first came home from the mental hospital, and he is a verbal processor, and he was in a very, very dark place, and all he wanted to do was talk. He didn't want me to talk. He didn't want me to weigh in. He just wanted to talk. And there were times, Amber, where he would talk for 4 or 5 hours straight. And I needed to be there in that room. And I quickly had to figure out how to not be brought down, because he's bringing up all of these things that would be so easy for me to just kind of fall into. So I found out that if I put my earbuds in one ear
Yeah.
and I turned my phone onto worship music, and I have a playlist on my phone called When Life Gets Scary, and I timed it for I put 5 hours worth of songs in there. So if it went long, and I would sit there and I could always hear this worship music playing in the background while I'm, as I say in my book, while I'm hearing but not listening, you
You know,
know?
it's interesting that you say that because when I was a traveling nursing assistant, I had an hour commute. And one of the things that I did, even if I was listening to a podcast until I got there, when I was 10 miles outside of town, I would put worship music on because I found that whatever song I ended on, even at noon, 5 hours, 6 hours later, I would still have that song playing through my mind. And it was I used that as a way to cope, to get through the day because it was hard work. It was during COVID.
Mhm.
I mean, it was
Mm,
crazy. You know, we were doing crazy things, but that music would run through my mind so that
mm,
no matter what I was facing, that was going on. And that is really a weapon that we
mm.
have to fight off what the devil would use to bring us down.
Oh, absolutely. And I would go in my room at night and I would turn on that playlist, and I would just kind of shuffle through
Yeah.
the playlist randomly. And whatever the one song is, I would listen to one song before I would turn my music off and try to fall asleep. And whatever that one song is, I would wake up in the middle of the night remembering that song. I'd wake
It's
up the next morning singing that song. And it does change. And when you said it triggered, when you were talking about David playing the harp for Saul, it triggered in my brain how important music is, and how important those worship songs, that almost like sermon set to music, is in our mind, because there were, that was what kept me going. And I agree that, I love what you say. We cannot let our mood. I mean, there are times when I'm a huge failure at this, but the griping and the complaining and the meanness and whatever. And if I don't respond immediately the right way, then I set the tone for the next 2 days. And I've learned to understand what you just shared with our listeners. And so thank you for that, because that's so, so, so important. So as we close out our conversation today, Amber, is there one last thing that you would like to share with our listeners?
You are seen, you are heard, you are loved. So often in the caretaking role, it feels like you are in your house just doing this tiny, insignificant thing that nobody notices, nobody cares. God cares. I mean, what you said is exactly the terminology that I use, sacred ground. I used to
Mhm.
watch a lot of people die, and I walked with them as they died. And to me, that is one of the most important things that you can do is remind people that they have a home in heaven, that Jesus died for their sins. And I was in the position, the unique, wonderful position when I was at the skilled nursing facility. I could tell people who may not know that, who didn't live as Christians,
Oh, I
that
love
that
that.
was available to them. And so it absolutely is sacred ground. What you said, take whatever situation you're in and ask God where the ministry is. You know, not just the
Mhm.
ministry to your loved one, but oftentimes there are other people who are walking through it that you can encourage and get encouragement from, which is exactly what you're doing, which is beautiful. But God sees you. He knows what's on
Mm.
your heart. He's not bothered by you. He loves you. I just want people to know that they are not forgotten.
Mm. And one of the best ways, and I have a newsletter that goes out every Tuesday. And my newsletter that went out today, because we're recording this on a Tuesday, I always give like a mini vacation idea for that, for the caregivers, so that they can, sometimes it's something easy, sometimes it's a little more involved. But the mini vacation today was, as a caregiver, you have the unique opportunity to minister to another caregiver.
Yes.
So who do you know who's a caregiver? Send him a text, send him a gift, send him something. I mean, the most beautiful thing for me is when somebody who knows I'm having a rough week sends me a gift pack of my favorite coffee from Milwaukee, the Door County coffee, and I get this package of coffee because they know that coffee and Door County, they just know how much I love that. And it's because it makes me feel special. And so we have that unique opportunity of being able to minister to someone who we know exactly what they're going through. Because I like to say, even though our journeys may all look different, we all need the same thing. And that is community and encouragement. And what you just said, knowing we're seen, because we're not alone. So how can the listeners get in touch with you? I know you have a podcast, you have other books, you blog. How can they find all of that?
The easiest way to do that is amberalbeeswenson.org. I work with a ministry called Time of Grace. And so all my stuff is on Time of Grace too. It's just on my website. It's just all there. And so,
Okay.
but also Time of Grace,
So I will
kinds of resources for people.
Okay. So I'll put both of those links in the show notes so that the listeners can just click. I like that because, you just click and it takes you there. And that's so much easier than trying to figure it out.
It is. It is.
Oh, well, thank you. This has been a total and complete delight. I'm going to reach out to you when your next book comes out and have you come back on and talk to us about it, because I think that I'm just excited. I'm excited for the book. And after having this conversation with you, I just know that your message is going to resonate with all of us. So thank you, thank you, thank you for coming and joining us today.
It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm thankful for each of you who also listened in on our conversation today. I don't take you for granted. I think I go through the information that I get about all the different countries that you live in and all the places in the world that you reside. And I pray through those and I think about all the people who tune in and who you're caring for. And I'm just so thankful that you are a part of our community. And if you know a caretaker, would you share the show with them? Because that helps other caretakers find the encouragement they need for their own journey. And also, if you would be willing to follow or subscribe to my podcast, I would really appreciate that, because this also helps other caretakers find us and puts us higher up in the algorithms where when people search, we pop up. And check out Amber's website and her books and her podcast. And also make sure you go to the the website, and sign up for the mailing list, because I have a weekly newsletter that launched on June 1st of this year. And it is full of inspiration and tips and ideas. And there's going to be giveaways and other information about fun events that are coming in 2025 and 2026. And the email community is always going to get that information first. I hope that you will join me next week for another meaningful conversation about what it looks like to be on the Caretaker's Journey. And until then, it's all about Him.